first guest on the program, which is the governor-elect of Abia State, Dr. Alex Otti, who is live for us in Abia State. Thank you so much, Dr. Otti, and it's good to see you. Congratulations once again. We saw that jubilation on the street of Umuahia when that announcement was made. And perhaps let me ask you, this is your third time of running, and you can see the kind of feeling on the street on the street of Abia State, and the response some of the citizens gave. For someone who had run twice before now, this is your third time. What was running through your mind? Can you give us an understanding how you felt driving through that traffic of human beings yesterday?
Thank you very much, Shehu, and I'm glad to be here once again. Well, yes, I was quite happy with the way people received the declaration and the return of our party and myself as the winners of that election. People trooped out in their thousands, and it was difficult to move in Umuahia. And don't also forget that the Umuahia North, which is Umuahia Urban, was where we had the highest number of votes. What this shows you clearly is that people are consistent with what they want. In 2015, we ran this race, and we clearly won the election, but it was stolen. We went to the court and retrieved it at the Court of Appeal, but the same in 20 that people know what they want. It would have been difficult to run for the third time if the reason I had decided to run in the first place had been dealt with by the outgoing administration. But what we see is that the decay is getting even deeper. The rot is getting worse. Salaries have not been paid for several months and years. Pensioners have not been paid for about 56 months. So people are actually tired, and people need the change. And interestingly, the same thing that happened in 2015 was going to happen again. In local governments in the state is used to commit electoral fraud and manipulation, and that's what being a local government. This time around, the beavers was bypassed in a few words, and then results were written, and these results keep mutating. As an additional local government is collated, the result from Obingwa changed. It was 81,000 in the first place, and that's why the original result sheet, you will still see the total number of accredited voters in their own imagination as 81,000. From there, it went to 86,000. From 86, it went to 92 until it got to 108,000. But by the time INEC intervened and called for election materials to be brought to Abuja for a review, INEC found out that there were only 27,400 accredited voters in Obingwa. And on the basis of that, they also found out that PDP scored 9,900 votes as against the 108,000 they claimed, while we scored 3,000 plus votes in Obingwa. And the INEC returning officer pronounced us winners, leading with over 97,000 votes. So what came through my mind was that these people are consistent, they know what they want, and I almost wept, given the thunderous ovation from our people That was not, it just came out in a way that actually moved emotions. And for me, I'd always wanted to develop the state. I'd always wanted to ensure that we have infrastructure. I'd always wanted to ensure that the state is run very well. And if I actually wanted to do that, given the emotions that we are expressing today, I will even do more. I guess I will leave it at that, Shane.
Interesting. And then perhaps when that was running through your mind, you may be looking at the burden that has now come upon you right now. For someone who's tried your shot at the 2-time and failed, but now you are third time lucky. And I asked you before the election if you thought that you were going to be the third time lucky. I didn't know I was speaking into what could have happened. But let's go into what the governor said. Governor Okeze Ikpeazu. Let me show the world what he said about your victory. The governor is an opponent in this case, and Governor Okeze Ikpeazu said that Otti has fought a long battle over a very long period of time and deserves commendation for his staying power and resilience. He says the governor-elect must see his victory as a higher call to service to the people of Abia State, and he has warned that you should not be disturbed. He's advised opponents not to disturb you and allow you to focus on governance and not to disturb you with litigations. I mean, coming from an opposition, how did you receive that?
Well, Sharon, yes. When I saw that, I was initially surprised, given the posturing of the governor prior to the election. I had called on him to give peace a chance. Had called on him to demilitarize his local government, Obingwa, where INEC staff were held hostage for 36 hours, where my own agent, that's the Labour Party agent for the local government, was battered and left for dead. And we had to make emergency arrangement to move him to the hospital. He's still lying critically ill there. When I saw him a few days ago, I was touched. So I had called on him to ensure that the process was transparent and that the will of the people, as expressed in the ballot boxes, will be maintained. So I felt he was very gracious with the statement, and I thank him, even if he realized late. But then, better late than never. Just like he had indicated in his statement, a lot of my opponents and people contested alongside me. The candidate of All Progressive Grand Alliance, APGA, Professor Gregory Ibe, was the first to concede defeat and actually called on INEC to conclude the collation and declare us winners. He felt that the delay, which we all privy to, was not necessary, because as at that time, 16 local governments had been collated, and I was leading with a clear 94,000 votes margin. Then he was followed by Bishop Benson, Bishop Onoha, Bishop Johnson Onoha, who also was the candidate of ADC, and then Bishop Emeka Wampa also followed suit by calling on INEC to declare the remaining results and announce me winner. A few other candidates have also done the same. So if we have many of the candidates conceding defeat, I believe that they will not turn around and engage in the litigation process, which can be destructive. But the reality is that when elections are not seen to be fair and transparent, when the process has been compromised, it becomes difficult to ask people not to engage or involve in litigation. So it's always good to stand for the right thing and to do the right thing. And deterrence of endorsements and support and the concessions that are happening is because in virtually all the local governments, except one, and that was Isialangwa North, where PDP actually rigged. Every other result that came out were consistent with the will of the people. So, direct answer to your question, I believe that there may not be a lot of litigations and there will not be a lot of distractions. So I thank the governor for being gracious, and I hope. Thank you.
Well, Isialangwa and Obingwa, these are two local governments that have become a problem for your governorship ambition over the last few years that you have tried to run for governorship. But this time around, it does look like Obingwa again, and people will say Obingwa again because we saw the last time again how things panned out. But I mean, with the statement of the governor and how the kind of camaraderie that is expressed in his statement, you have alluded that Abia State has been stopped or, not allowed to progress in terms of development as it should be, and you have blamed it on the PDP government, in whom you have ended a 24-year reign. From 1999, it's been a almost PDP government almost throughout in most part of those 24 years, which you have ended in this particular time. There are a lot of things that you have alleged that the PDP had done badly in power in Abia State. Would you be looking deeply into what has gone wrong before you as soon as you assume office?
Thank you. That's a very good question. If you do not look deeply, you will not understand. So I will look deeply. But what will I do with my findings? My findings will be for me to prepare, for me to understand, and for me to know the depth of the rot. There's no doubt there are a few things that you don't need to look deeply to understand. You don't need to look deeply to know that doctors who are on strike today have not been paid for the past 26 months. You don't need to look too deeply to understand that pensioners in the state have been owed their pensions and allowances for the past 56 to 57 months. You don't need to look deeply to find that Aba, which was supposed to be the commercial and manufacturing hub of the state, is in ruins. You don't need to look deeply to find that the whole state is almost like a garbage yard. Now you need to look deeply to find that Umuahia, which is supposed to be the state capital, is a glorified village. You don't need to look deeply to find that our schools are in ruins. Our hospitals are mere consulting clinics. So there's a whole lot that have gone wrong with the state. Of course, statistics will also help you understand that a state which was handed over in 2015, 29th of May, with a debt profile of 34.5 billion, owes as at December 2021 about 190 billion. Maybe you need to look deeply to know how much they owe as at December 2022. But then, all these are problems that we can solve. We are prepared. We have already articulated what we are going to do in our manifesto. One of the major things that we need to do is to ensure that we prepare the state for business. As at December 2021, the Ease of Doing Business Index shows Abia State ranking number 32 out of 36 states in the Federation. And what that means, like I've always maintained, is that if there's an investor, whether local or foreign, and he wants to invest in Nigeria, there are 31 other states to look at who will take priority over Abia State. So we need to quickly move our ranking to single digits if it is not number one.
Yeah, because I'd like to touch on the economic, the developmental issues, the welfare of the people of the state, and issues of security. But let me be clear about my question. So you said you need to dig deep and look to the details of the rot over the last few years in Abia State. Are you doing that with the aim of probing whoever that is found guilty? Or what would you be doing with the details? Should you be digging into it?
Okay, I know that's where you are going. So if you had let me land, I would have landed there. So the reason I'm looking deeply is to understand. Quite frankly, I know that the enormity of work that is required in Abia is a lot. And I wouldn't want distractions. I also have stayed here long enough to know that whenever you start a probe, you begin to get distracted. And by the time you are done with the probe, and you probably have a report which would have indicted a lot of people, the process now begins. And that process will mean going to the High Court, from the High Court to the Court of Appeal, from the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. There was a former governor whose successor actively wanted to prosecute, and it took him 12 years to secure a conviction at the Federal High Court. And 6 months after, the conviction was reversed. So I wouldn't like to use the 4 years and another 4 years that I believe Abia people will give me to be chasing enemies.
It might be a case of anyone who have sinned should sin no more. Alex Otti wants to concentrate on governance, but if you have stolen any money in the coffers of government, go and sin no more. Could that be the case?
With a little modification. If you have stolen any money, and it's still with you, please return it. But I'm actually not going to dissipate energy chasing real or imagined criminals or real or imagined looters. But I will not allow corruption. I will not allow our money to be shared. I would like our money to be used to work for our people.
All right.
That is the modification that I would like to make.
So let's go into the issue of governance now. A lot of experts have, and a lot of them have agreed that there is a problem in the governance structure in Nigeria as to the cost of governance. You see litany of special assistant, assistant to the special assistant, advisor to the special assistant, assistant to the special advisor, and you see a lot of travels, and a lot of people have posited that this is where government money goes into, and that is the reason why there is so enormous money going into servicing people in government, not the people of the state. Would you be doing anything differently in terms of cutting cost of governance?
Absolutely. I have time and again spoken out, written about the cost of governance being a major problem in the country. And it applies to the federal government as well as it applies to state governments and all the way to local governments. And I believe that my presidential candidate did very well in Anambra State because he ran the cost of governance. And it's the same kind of model that we are going to run in Abia. We will not, there's only so many jobs you can create in the public sector. So when you are appointing 12,000 personal assistants and special assistants who basically don't have an office but collect money at the end of the month, you are just creating a problem for yourself. So we are going to run a very lean government. We are going to cut our code according to our size. We believe that it is the private sector that should be supported to create jobs. And whatever it takes to support the private sector, we'll do exactly that. But we are not going to run a bogus government. We are not going to get ourselves involved in very high cost of travel. There's a state that I looked at their numbers and I find that 2 billion naira was spent within a year to charter private jets. That does not make sense. I find that a lot of money is spent buying expensive wines and champagne and all that. That is also not responsible. So we are going to run a lean government. We are going to rein in cost of governance so that we have enough money released to support the economy.
So you might be using the Peter Obi template and also he's very popular of saying he doesn't give shishi. And I probably would like to ask you in that respect, say for Peter Obi, do you think you probably would have emerged winner in this time around?
Well, let me start by responding to, we know they give shishi. Yes, Labour Party, we know they give shishi. But that does not mean that we will be unreasonable. No, far from it. We will be very reasonable. Peter Obi is also very reasonable. He just doesn't throw away money. But any time that there is something that needs to be done with money, he will ensure that he gets maximum value for that money. And that may include going to the market to price it himself. So one of the engagements he had, he said you could not buy fuel if he was not seated in the car. Maybe he overdid it, but that is the kind of thing you need to do if you want to cut costs of governance. Now, to the question of if I would have won without Peter Obi, well, I'll draw your attention back to 2015 when I ran under APGA. There was no Peter Obi and there was actually no presidential candidate. And we have it on record that I won that election landslide. So as at the time we were joining Labour Party, Peter Obi had not joined, and we didn't know that Peter Obi was coming to Labour Party, and it took about a week before he now called me and said he had just purchased the presidential nomination form and he was coming to Labour Party. So we are prepared to fight the way we fought in 2015 to ensure that we win. So the votes we garnered in Abia could have been helped by Peter Obi. Maybe the margin would have been smaller. And that is why it is important to always acknowledge Peter Obi, because he came to Abia about 5 times really, to campaign for us, even before campaigns kicked off, when we did our annual banquet for the Executive Foundation, the foundation that awards scholarship every year institutions. He came and he was part of it. That was in July last year. He came again for the flag of our campaign. That was in November. He came again and yet again. So I think he has done well for us. So both the obedience and himself, they actually did very well to support us. And that's why even the first election, out of the 8 House of Representative seats, we took 6 of them and sent some people on permanent retirement from politics. And then the Senate, we have 1 out of the 3. Hopefully we'll have another one by the time litigation closes. So Peter Obi was a great addition to our campaign, but I can tell you that we have won election before in Abia State without him. And since things have gotten worse between 2015 and this time, I believe we will still have won.
So let's get into some other issues. You made some very specific promises. And part of those promises is that you will pay arrears of unpaid salaries and pensions within 6 months. Now, this is on the backdrop of a state debt that is in the region of about almost 200 billion naira. And when we wonder, where would this money be coming from? It's a very good idea to pay those who are being owed their legitimate money, wages, and pensions. But then where would you be getting them from? For those who have criticized that statement to say that may be too dramatic and maybe unrealistic.
Well, they have a right to their opinion. And, you know, people like us have what we call trade secret. I'm a financeman, and I've spent the last 30 years of my life putting things around transactions, finance, banking together. And so I know exactly what to do. The first thing that I would like to do, and which I have started discussions, is to look at this debt, almost 200 billion, and find a way to get some write-offs, some debt forgiveness, and then finally some restructuring. I will sit down with the lenders. I've already started doing that in the last 24 hours, and a lot of them that we have reached are actually very agreeable to sit down and look at those debts again. I may not have proof, but something tells me that some of those loans may have problems with them in terms of interest rate, in terms of exchange rate, and all that. I know that the finance ministry had been occupied by ex-bankers and some of my junior colleagues. But again, our people say that an old woman doesn't get too old to a dance that she knows how to dance. So I'm going to sit down with the lenders, and we're going to be talking about how to restructure them.
All right. So
one of the things I have also discussed with a bank CEO is how to now issue a bond and term out some of these facilities for as long as 30 years, so that we can have headroom to operate. We also intend to bring some sanity into the internally generated revenue of the state. The current government says they collect about 15 to 16 billion annually. I think that's a bit too low. I also know that the process of collecting IGR in the state is anything but transparent. So by the time we introduce technology using taxes, we'll be able to generate a whole lot more than that. So we have our strategy well cut out, and we are sure that we'll be able to deliver on those promises.
So what is the margin that you hope that you could take the IGR to?
If 15 billion is correct, which I think it's not, because I do also know that some of the revenue collectors of the government are boys and government racketeers who collect money and put in their pocket. If we introduce transparency into revenue collection, in the first instance, we should be able to move from 16 billion to over 20 billion without doing anything.
All right.
And by the time we begin to grow the economy, you know, again, taxes are things that you collect when you have already introduced prosperity in the economy. So by the time we begin to develop the economy, I'm sure our internally generated revenue will even go beyond 20 billion. And
all right, that's Otti.
And maybe up to 30 billion, maybe within the first.
All right, let's wrap up the conversation. I have just less than 60 seconds to do so. There are those interest group in the state are already asking you to prioritize the issue of security, workers' welfare. But there's something I'd like to say, and this is what my own view of economics of the regional government or the state government, which in the real sense, if we are to follow federalism, we need to also look at how the state can be comfortably making their own monies without so much dependence on the federal government. So I'd like to know, what identity would you like to give Abia State? There is Aba that is globally recognized. People in Aba, they are very, very resilient, and they make very fashionable shoes and all what have you, leather materials coming from Aba. But all of these are largely being consumed on the local level. How would you like Aba to be recognized, or Abia State as a state? What kind of signature or stamp would you like to put on the economy of that state?
Very good question. I just wish it wasn't the last question, because it's something that I would like to dwell on. But the first thing that we do, the first thing that we do, as we highlighted in our manifesto, is to create a special ministry for Aba. Like I said earlier, Aba is the industrial and commercial hub of the Southeast, if not Nigeria. The only problem that Aba has had is the consistent neglect of previous administrations. And that is why most parts of Aba are simply impassable. The other day, it rained, and I was in Ariaria Market, which is arguably the largest market in the Southeast, and the whole place was flooded. People's shops were flooded. All it requires is for a responsible government to channel the stormwater to a place called Waterside, and then the roads will be built. It's not rocket science, and we are going to do that. So we are going to ensure that infrastructure renewal is top on our agenda. And we're also going to ensure that security, which you mentioned, a lot of times people talk about security and they don't understand why insecurity is the order of the day. Abia State has an unemployment rate of 51% today, over and above the 33.3% national average. So right, what do you expect when virtually everybody is unemployed? So we are going to ensure that we create wealth, we take a lot of our people out of the streets and secure the state. And once you have good roads, you have electricity, you have pipe-borne water, you clean up the place, and the environment is attractive.
All right.
Most of the businesses that voted with their feet will come back.
All right.
And Aba would take its rightful place as the industrial and commercial hub. People, like you said, are very resident, and all they require is a responsible government that can support their businesses, and they will go places.
Dr. Alex Otti, Governor-elect of Abia State, congratulations one more time, and I wish you the very best in what looks to me like an enormous task, but is a business and a role that you applied for. I wish you the very best, and I hope that the people of Abia State won't be disappointed. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you very much.